AmericaFest 2025, when the conservative family airs its grievances, and why that may matter more than unity. Phoenix, Arizona did not feel like a city hosting a political conference this weekend. It felt more like a pressure cooker. Inside the sprawling halls of Turning Point USA's annual AmericaFest gathering, thousands of conservatives arrived expecting red meat speeches, ideological camaraderie, and a sense of momentum heading into the next election cycle. What many encountered instead was something far messier: open disagreement, ideological tension, and public conflict among some of the movement's most recognizable figures. And yet, in the middle of that discord, one voice cut through the noise with a reminder that reframed the entire event. Erica Kirk, who now leads one of the most influential conservative youth organizations in the country, stepped onto the stage Friday night with a calm smile and a line that instantly resonated. "You can say whatever you want about AmericaFest," she told the crowd, "but it's definitely not boring. Honestly, it feels like Thanksgiving dinner when the family starts arguing about the family business." The room laughed, but the comparison landed because it was true. Families argue, movements do too. And over the course of several days in Phoenix, the conservative coalition found itself grappling with uncomfortable questions about identity, loyalty, ideology, and priorities, debates that many attendees did not expect, but which may shape the future of the right far more than any single speech. A conference that became a confrontation. AmericaFest has traditionally been a celebration, part rally, part networking hub, part political pep talk. Attendees often describe it as an immersive experience where conservative students, activists, donors, and media figures gather to recharge. This year, however, the energy shifted. Instead of a unified message, multiple high-profile moments revealed deep fractures, particularly around foreign policy, cultural identity, and the role of nationalism within conservatism. The most public flashpoints involved clashes, direct and indirect, between figures such as Ben Shapiro, Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, and others whose audiences overlap but whose priorities increasingly diverge. The disagreements were not subtle. They spilled onto stages, into interviews, and across social media timelines, with Israel policy, anti-Semitism accusations, and definitions of American identity becoming recurring fault lines. For many attendees, the spectacle was unsettling. One attendee, Brent, a man in his early 50s who traveled from Oklahoma City with his 2 teenage sons, described the tension as emotionally exhausting. "I was there the night when things really boiled over," he said, stepping outside for a cigarette as he recounted the moment. "At one point, I told my wife I needed to get some air. It just felt like too much. I wanted to step back into the real world." His reaction echoed what many others quietly expressed. This wasn't why they came. The Israel debate no one expected. Foreign policy debates are nothing new in conservative circles, but what shocked attendees was how central the Israel issue became and how emotionally charged it grew. What began as ideological disagreement escalated into accusations of moral failure, betrayal, and even anti-Semitism. Some speakers framed unwavering support for Israel as non-negotiable. Others questioned the wisdom of endless foreign entanglements. The arguments weren't academic, they were personal. For Jewish attendees and speakers, the tone of certain criticisms felt alarming. For others, the inability to discuss policy without invoking accusations felt stifling. What unsettled many was not that disagreements existed, but that they consumed so much oxygen, overshadowing issues like inflation, border security, crime, and cultural influence, which had motivated many attendees to travel across the country. As one longtime supporter put privately, "People came here worried about rent, groceries, and gas prices. Instead, we're debating who's allowed to call themselves a real American." That question exploded into public view when Ohio gubernatorial candidate Vivek Ramaswamy addressed the crowd. Without hedging, he dismissed the concept of heritage Americans as absurd. "There is no such thing as being more American than someone else," he said. "You either are an American or you aren't. It's binary." A decade ago, that statement would have passed without controversy, but in today's political climate, it struck a nerve. For some in the audience, Ramaswamy's remarks felt like common sense, a reaffirmation of civic nationalism over ethnic or ancestral definitions. For others, they felt dismissive. Many conservatives who trace their roots back generations to the nation's founding feel that their history is routinely minimized or mocked by progressive narratives. When told repeatedly that pride and lineage is something to be ashamed of, some respond by clinging more tightly to it. Ramaswamy's critics argue that acknowledging heritage does not require exclusion. His supporters countered that elevating ancestry risks undermining the very civic principles that define the American experiment. The debate revealed something deeper than disagreement over terminology. It exposed a movement struggling to articulate who it is and who it wants to be. the farmers, the parents, and the everyday conservatives. Lost amid the ideological sparring were voices that rarely dominate headlines but make up the backbone of the conservative base. Dennis, a fourth-generation farmer from South Dakota, had little interest in abstract identity debates. "If you love the country and follow the law, you're an American," he said plainly. "That's good enough for me." What Dennis wanted to talk about was soybeans and sweet beets and tariffs. Trade policy, he explained, had hurt in the short term, but he believed the long-term picture justified the pain. "It hasn't been easy," he admitted, "but sometimes you have to take a hit now to fix things later." Dennis wasn't alone. Many attendees, young and old, consistently redirected conversations back to prices, wages, housing costs, and economic stability. For them, cultural arguments felt like distractions from material realities. That tension between cultural identity and economic anxiety ran quietly beneath the surface of nearly every discussion at AmericaFest. Erica Kirk's quiet authority. Against that backdrop, Erica Kirk emerged as a stabilizing presence. While she now occupies one of the most visible leadership roles in the movement, she chose to emphasize something far more personal: motherhood. By framing the weekend's conflict as a family dispute rather than a fracture, she gave attendees permission to view disagreement as a phase rather than a failure. Her approach contrasted sharply with the combative tone that dominated social media coverage. Instead of escalating tensions, she normalized them. Families argue because they care. Movements fracture when they stop listening. That distinction mattered. The case for fighting it out in person. One of the more compelling defenses of the weekend's chaos came not from the stage, but online. Turning Point USA spokesperson Andrew Colvett posted a message urging supporters not to panic. "Forcing conformity with uncomfortable conversations leads nowhere," he wrote. "This isn't a civil war. This is a coalition working out its center before the real battles begin." The post resonated with many attendees who believed that airing disagreements publicly, in a shared space, was healthier than anonymous sniping online. There is something fundamentally different about debating someone whose hand you can shake afterward. Several attendees noted that while arguments felt intense, the in-person setting prevented complete dehumanization. Disagreements remained disagreements, not permanent excommunications. J.D. Vance and the weight of expectations. As AmericaFest moved towards its conclusion, anticipation built around Vice President J.D. Vance's keynote address. By early morning, lines had already formed. For younger attendees especially, Vance represented a bridge between populist energy and institutional power. "I wasn't old enough to vote for Trump," said Sarah, a college freshman attending her first AmericaFest, "but I'll be able to vote for Vance. That matters to me." The enthusiasm was genuine, but so was the pressure. Could Vance speak to a movement that had just spent days arguing with itself? Could he offer reassurance without papering over real divisions? The answer would not just shape perceptions of his leadership, but signal whether unity was possible without uniformity. After the argument comes the choice. Families argue, Erica Kirk reminded the crowd, sometimes loudly, sometimes painfully. What defines them is what comes next. Do they leave the table, or do they pass the pie and keep talking? Representative Anna Paulina Luna offered a blunt reminder to close the weekend. "You might not like every conservative figure," she told the crowd, "but if the radical left wins, we all lose together." It was not a poetic line, but it was effective. Despite the infighting, the conservative coalition remains broad, energized, and electorally viable. The disagreements exposed in Phoenix did not signal collapse, they signaled growing pains. And perhaps, as many quietly acknowledged, they were long overdue. Charlie Kirk believed in debate, he believed in coalition, and he believed that the conservative movement was strong enough to argue without breaking. If AmericaFest 2025 proved anything, it's that the family is still in the house. The question now is whether it can sit back down at the table, together.